When I think of a 16-year-old, I think of, prom, boys, friends, girlfriends, preparations for college, big dreams. I don't see being locked down in a cell for 23 hours a day, denied access to education and recreation. I don't think any kid deserves that.
There are about 2.5 million children who are arrested every year. I'm sure thousands of children in solitary confinement. It is not an easy number to capture because it is not a number that facilities voluntarily choose to report.
Harlem is a place that even if you get rich, you don't never want to leave. I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of guys didn't have father figures. My great-grandfather was locked up. My cousins was locked up. My uncles was locked up. 2007 was one of the years that changed my life. I was 16, just turned 16. Detectives knocked on my door, and I think from that day, I never went home.
Okay, all right. I can tell my story how I usually tell it to people, okay? Me running away became a cycle. I would run away, get caught, get sent back home. I remember this first time getting arrested and the police officer never asking, why are you running away? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because if he did, maybe I would have told him that I was scared to return home. My father was an alcoholic. He was abusive to my mother. And I didn't know if I could, survive being there every day, and that's why I ran away. This cell wasn't big at all. I remember getting up and almost being able to stretch my arms out and being almost able to touch the walls.
It's like being in a closet every single day for 23 hours. Anytime I only feel that freedom is when you get that 1 hour to step out. You don't even step out, you step out in a cage where the only thing you can really see is the sun.
Even perfectly healthy adults can go crazy in solitary confinement.
Lost myself, for a while, because it got to the point where I felt like I was going crazy.
And you don't take a shower every single day. You smelling, you stinking. 3 days without taking a shower. And I had to learn how to take a bird bath. That's when you go to the sink and start really cleaning yourself.
It's often weeks or months that you are completely shut off from that completely natural developmental moment in your life when you are growing from a child to a teenager to an adult. And we interrupt that with solitary.
I don't think people understand how important is education to people that are detained. So when you're taking 45 days from someone, that means you're taking 45 days of knowledge, In 45 days, people become successful. You know what I'm saying? Anything can happen in 45 days.
We're just setting them back up for failure to come right back to the same system that will continue to fail them over and over again.
A prominent neurologist convicted of sexually abusing patients took his own life today at a jail in Rikers Island. Sources say 68-year-old Riccardo Cruciani was found unresponsive this morning in a shower area. His attorney is calling it a violent death and is calling for an investigation. He says orders for Cruciani to be placed in protective custody and under suicide watch after his conviction last month were not followed. Cruciani was awaiting sentencing on 12 counts, including predatory sexual assault and rape. One victim released a statement saying it is a sad day for all of his victims who will never get to have finality and never have the chance to address the defendant to tell him directly how his crimes greatly impacted their lives. And another victim says, I take comfort knowing he now faces another judge.
Correction captain is attacked on the job. We've just learned moments ago that the captain is in the hospital in stable condition. The Department of Correction says a weapon used in the attack this afternoon has been recovered, and the DOC commissioner says charges will be pursued against the inmate.
Meanwhile, another death at Rikers Island is creating more buzz about the conditions there, especially with inmates. In an exclusive interview, News 12's Caitlin Ulrich speaks with one inmate working hard to keep himself safe because he doesn't think anyone else will.
What goes through your mind knowing that this is the 12th person to die in the jail this year?
I don't want to be the 13th.
Daquan Cassidy reached out to me before today when another inmate died in custody at Rikers Island. He reached out to me because of his personal experiences at the jail.
What went through your mind when you heard that another inmate died?
That I just got to be more careful. Try to take better care of myself and try to be on top of it if I see another inmate with any type of, in any type of need or help or care. Try to be observant.
According to a statement from the Department of Corrections, the man who died was housed at the Eric M. Taylor Center. And Cassidy says he's also housed there, but he didn't know him. But he and other inmates are thinking about the possibility of more deaths.
I would believe that because, if one inmate is going through some type of trouble, all the other inmates try to, speak up and tell them to hurry up. Like, what I'm saying? Treat us like humans, because sometimes we feel like we get treated like dogs in here because we're behind, a closed door.
But Cassidy says the death of another inmate shapes his perspective.
I just feel like with seeing that and hearing that, I just got to be stronger for my family and just, pray for his family and pray for others that, they make it through this, because it's not over. Some of us make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we bad people.
Now, in a statement, the DOC commissioner says that he is deeply saddened by his death, and he says the department is going to conduct an internal investigation to determine what were the circumstances around this death. In Brooklyn, Caitlin Ulrich, News 12.
Another inmate has died while in custody at Rikers Island. A person was found dead around 6:30 this morning. The cause of the death is under investigation. The attorney for the victim's family has identified him as Dr. Riccardo Cruciani. The 68-year-old neurologist was convicted earlier this month of predatory sexual assault for raping patients in 2012. Cruciani's family says the court ordered the DOC to place him in protective custody and under suicide watch. At least 11 detainees have died while in custody at Rikers Island this year.
Juvenile detention. We're going to begin with some children who are staying in the juvenile detention right now, hundreds of days after they're accused of crimes. According to a new report, Tarrant County leaders called disturbing. As Jason Allen will tell you now, they pointed the finger at judges today for the overcrowding issue.
Tarrant County leaders threatened to take money and jobs away from juvenile judges Tuesday after a report into overcrowding revealed children are staying in detention longer than they have in more than 20 years.
But these are kids. And I think we've got to remember that. And yes, some of them have committed some pretty serious, crimes, but they're still kids.
The report found the average population of 48 children in 2015 has more than doubled this year to 119. The average stay of 13 days is now up to 25. 7 of the children there in late June had been there 215 days or longer, and 92% of them were children of color.
It is hard to understand how it is not racist.
Without naming him, county leaders repeatedly questioned why elected Judge Alex Kim isn't moving cases forward or moving juveniles into community-based programs rather than detention. 2 associate courts he's in charge of cancel or reset so many hearings the report says staff calls them ghost courts. And though the report suggested the district attorney's office is taking too long to file petitions in cases, Sharon Wilson pointed out it's not up to her office on when a child is released.
The judge still can. The judge always can.
Some of the juveniles are stuck waiting because of the overwhelmed state system, which has stopped accepting new kids. The courts here took a break for a few weeks in the winter because of a COVID outbreak, and the report notes that there's an increase in violent referrals right now, when judges may be more cautious about releasing those kids. A juvenile board is scheduled to meet tomorrow and could discuss some of the findings in the report. In Fort Worth, Jason Allen, CBS 11 News.
Since 2000, New York has closed 27 state prisons. Nicole Porter of the Sentencing Project found New York is part of a trend with 21 other states.
New York is among a handful of states that have significantly reduced its prison population since it peaked in 2009. The prison closures didn't follow right away, though. There was a lot of resistance to closing prisons.
Porter and the Sentencing Project found in a new report released this month that states are weighing a variety of options for what replaces a prison once it is closed. Many were built in economically struggling communities where jobs can be scarce. Governor Kathy Hochul this year created a new panel to find ways of repurposing vacant prisons to make them more economically viable.
Their location, whether or not it's in a rural area, a suburban one, or in an urban setting, will really influence what's possible for the prison.
Prison closures and criminal justice policy has been fraught with politics in the last several years amid rising concerns over public safety. Republican candidate for Governor Lee Zeldin has pledged to push for a repeal of a measure limiting the use of solitary confinement in prisons.
The best thing to do is to sit down with those corrections officers and tell them, what do you need? Recruitment and retention is an issue. Assaults are on the rise.
But Porter says the current system is just unmanageable.
The United States overbuilt its prison system, and in the midst of decarceration, the United States should seriously take steps to reduce its carceral footprint. And those steps can help reimagine what the United States should promise to all of its residents, including those most at risk of imprisonment.
That cry was coming from inside this federal jail in Brooklyn. This is in the newly drawn 10th Congressional District, and 4 of the candidates for that hotly contested seat were at the site on Tuesday to call for better oversight and conditions at the facility.
We are standing here today calling on more active federal oversight. We are standing here today calling for an increase in medical staffing.
We must center restorative justice approaches that cause less harm to those that have always had the odds stacked against them. The denial of access to medical care, to food, to basic hygiene, the stretches of time that we have seen MDC go without heat in the dead of winter.
We are pushing for basic humanity, basic due process, basic rights that every defendant must get.
All those candidates and Assemblywoman Joanne Simon signed this letter to the U.S. Attorney General and the Bureau of Prisons, calling for reforms, including calling for all staff to undergo screening when entering the facility to check for contraband. It was a clear show of unity in the final days of the race, and it comes a day after 2 of these candidates, Mondaire Jones and Yulie New, had a press conference to attack one of their opponents, Dan Goldman, claiming he was not progressive enough for the district. Jones went even further on Tuesday, releasing a new ad making the same point.
Conservative Dan Goldman or progressive Mondaire Jones.
I'm not really worried about the process here or, the false smears that my opponents have been making against me.
While these candidates came together over this Brooklyn jail, they are not all on the same page on the proposed jail on the other side of the district in Chinatown, which is supposed to help replace Rikers Island.
We're seeing these conditions not just here, but in places like Rikers Island.
Rivera voted for the jail at the council. Goldman is undecided.
Before I take a position on it, I want to make sure I understand everybody's view, make sure the community has a seat at the table.
New is against it.
I don't think that we need more Rikers and more MDCs.
A spokesperson for Jones told New York One he supports the plan to replace Rikers Island, but wants to make sure it doesn't impact the surrounding community in Manhattan.
It's clear Goldman is going into the final days of this campaign with the momentum, but with such a crowded field and about a week to go in this race, anyone could still win. In Sunset Park, Courtney Gross.
State corrections officers are repeating their call for a repeal of the HALT Act. The union that represents those officers kicked off a series of rallies today, highlighting skyrocketing violence and poor morale inside prisons statewide. The HALT Act, which was recently passed back in April, puts a cap on how long an inmate can stay in solitary confinement, which corrections officers say puts their deputies and other inmates at risk.
Law and order in our prisons has been taken away. It's unsafe for not just those men and women working in the prisons, but for the inmates themselves.
HALT, or Humane Alternatives to Long-Term Solitary Confinement, limits the use of segregated confinement for all people to just 15 days and aims to use rehabilitative measures to cool down.